My favorite part of any TV show or movie is when our guy just destroys some dipshit with the verbal ass whooping of a lifetime.
I hate this. This sucks. This blows. I couldn't disagree more. This is lib content, man. This is lib content, but we're gonna watch it anyway.
Dropped 150 grand on a fucking education you could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the public library.
But I know something about you. You went to Cranbrook. That's a private school. What's the matter, dog? You embarrassed? This guy's a gangster. His real name's Clarence.
I'm interested in selling my youngest daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7 in this building. When
Actually, the Eminem part was the good one because, like, that's the only working class person.
President stands, nobody sits.
Devastating. And sometimes the damage extends beyond the screen. Paul Giamatti talked shit about Merlot in the 2004 wine thriller Sideways.
And if they want to drink Merlot, we're drinking Merlot.
No, if anybody orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I am not drinking any.
Honestly, like, if I'm the leader, it's gonna be run by an army camp. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. You don't want that.
Fucking Merlot!
And it seems to have contributed to an actual decline in Merlot sales. So when I saw a viral TikTok clip from the new show Landman featuring a crotchety Billy Bob Thornton spewing a bunch of weird lies about wind turbines, you know, it really bummed me out.
By the way, Merlot is a good wine. Merlot is a good wine. Not my favorite. I'm a basic bitch who loves a good cab. But Merlot is a great wine.
You want to guess how much oil it takes to lubricate that?
Is there an ethical way to invest in the stock market? My answer to that is Mark's invested in stocks. That's my response to that question. Who gives a fuck? If you're talking about, like, would I invest in, like, the most evil companies in the planet? I probably wouldn't. But the reality is buying a stock is not really, I mean, to be honest with you, is not really investing anything into the company. The company gained their you know, the money from selling the stocks when they issued the shares. So if you're not buying the IPO or you're not buying a new offering of shares, you're not really giving money to the company. All in all, I would say I don't invest in shitty companies, but you have to prepare for retirement. Here's the thing that many people need to hear. You live in a capitalist society, which means I buy health insurance. I buy umbrella coverage. I buy car insurance. I buy stuff, you know, stuff like that. Do I agree with those things? No. But I also know that I live in a capitalist society, and if I get sick, I need health insurance. If I get sued, I need umbrella coverage. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have to self-insure. And, you know, that's just the way it is. I have to be a realist to survive in the system. I don't exploit people as much as I can avoid it, but I try to survive. And I try to have a happy life. Being a socialist doesn't mean you need to sacrifice every single thing about yourself that could make you happy. My aunt said some towns by Sailorsburg and Lehigh Valley still have KKK marches and cross burnings. Maybe we need to start a compound around there. I don't know Sailorsburg.
That fucking thing? And its 20-year lifespan, it won't offset the carbon footprint of making it. And don't get me started on... You want to guess how much oil it takes?
Viral TikTok clip from the new show Landman featuring a crotchety Billy Bob Thornton spewing a bunch of weird lies about wind turbines. You know, it really bummed me out.
You want to guess how much oil it takes to lubricate that fucking thing? And its 20-year lifespan, it won't offset the carbon footprint of making it. And don't get me started on solar panels and the lithium in your Tesla battery.
And I'm not saying that TV needs to fact police their characters, but I am worried that the millions of people who saw the out-of-context clip might assume that the incorrect statements of a fictional television character are actually very smart and need to be spread far and wide. And luckily, spending a month of my life getting to the bottom of this is fun and interesting to me for some reason. Hi, I'm Raleigh Williams, a guy with a climate science and policy degree and exactly 0 memorized Bible verses. And this is an episode about how disinformation gets around the internet.
There's some pretty good Bible verses out there. Like, this is my favorite. Whenever I meet a Bible believing Christian, I'm like, I always like to be like Leviticus 1934. Treat the foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Treat them like native-born Israelites, and love them as you love yourself. Remember, you were once foreigners living in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Or as the King James Bible says, but the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself. For ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. That's my favorite for my Bible-believing Trump supporters. I'm always like, Leviticus 1934. This is funny because the foreigner residing you must be treated as native-born. Like, that's the funniest sentence in the Bible for Christian conservatives. Mark 12:30? I don't know that I know Mark 12:30. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength. This is probably one of the worst verses of the Bible. This is some liberal ass bullshit. That's the thing I hate about modern Christianity more than anything. Modern Christianity has been turned into a consumptive act of individual. That's why Protestantism is the religion of capitalism. Because it's all about my personal connection with Jesus. Like you're buying a fucking moleskin boot. Like it's liberal, goofy bullshit. There's nothing about collective responsibility and good works and caring for your fellow man and sacrificing for others. It's all this like, if I believe in Jesus, then my soul will go to heaven, which is the most self-centered, anti-Christian belief. Fuck your soul.
Welcome to Climate Town.
The story of Sodom and Gomorrah was explicitly about punishing the population for harming foreigners, and conservative Christians retconned it to be about punishing the people for being queer. Yeah. Well, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where they want to rape strangers, they want to rape a male stranger who's an angel. Like angels go down with to Sodom and Gomorrah, and they like a mob gathers to rape them. Like they were trying, like the point of that story is that these people are really evil. They don't care about others. They take advantage of foreigners. They're scum. That was the point. It wasn't the having sex part. It was attacking innocence part. Jesus fucking Christ. LOL, raping an angel is wild. Yeah, they were disguised as men. God basically looked at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is God looked at these cities and they were like, damn, these people are evil. And they were like, no. And some angels were like, no, there's some good people in those cities. There's this guy named Lot. He's a good guy. And God was like, I don't know. All right, you think he's such a good guy? You're going down there as angels. You're going down there as humans and you're testing it. That was the story. And the angels were like, bet. And they went down. And just before they were gang raped, Lot came out of his house and was like, no, rape my daughter instead. Here, come in my house. That's the story. like, see, God, Lot is a good guy. And God was like, all right, fine. I'm going to destroy these cities, but Lot's family gets to escape. That is Sodom and Gomorrah. His daughters eventually got him drunk and raped him. Yes, yeah, that's the next part of the story. Anyway, so it's Sodom and Gomorrah. The next part is, so God's like, all right, we're destroying that. And the angels are like, all right, you got to leave. You got to take your family. God is about to destroy these cities for sucking so much. And Lot was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And God has like a really funny sense of humor. So don't look back. You're not allowed to look at the city. It's going to be really sick. It's going to be really sick. There's going to be asteroids coming down. There's going to be pillars of fire. It's going to be the sickest explosions you've ever heard, but you're not allowed to look. All right. You got to be cool. You can't look back at the really based cool explosions. And Lot was like, okay, I guess. And then they all ran away very cinematically from the cities, and God is just blasting them. And then Lot's wife is like, wow, that sounds so sick. And she looked back, bam, turned into a pillar of salt. God was like, yoink, you failed the test. Sorry, you don't get to see the based explosions. Psh, zapped her right into a pillar of salt. So Lot's family, they're like wandering around and they're like, oh my God, that was the apocalypse. Like, God just killed everyone. We're the only living people left on Earth. They thought it was like God had like killed everybody, but no, God had just killed like 2 cities, right? And they thought, oh, it's the apocalypse, everybody's dead but us. And so they went to a cave for shelter, and Lot's daughters were like, we're the last 2 women and our dad is the last man on Earth. We've got to repopulate the Earth like Adam and Eve. So they're like, all right, well, I don't want to, but we got to repopulate the Earth. We're the only women left. So they got him drunk. They said, okay, we'll give him a bunch of wine and then we'll fuck him. And he won't know what he's doing. This is the Bible. This is an accurate telling of the Bible. How do I know this? Unfortunately, I have read it. How do I know all that? I read the fucking Bible! It's very funny because a lot of people will like hold up the Bible and be like, this is so holy. I love it. God, Bible is so cool. It's so awesome. It's so holy. I'm swearing on it. I swear on the Bible. That's how important this is. And it's like, have you ever looked at it? Like, even for fun? There's some really funny shit in there. I'm not gonna lie. There's some really, it is very important. Like, the Bible is crazy. It's got a bunch of really funny things in it, really funny stories. There's like good religious teachings or good like moral teachings. And then there's a bunch of just wild shit. And some of the most evil shit you've ever heard in your life. And you're like, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? Who thinks this is a Bible? Like, this could direct my behavior in the modern 21st century. This shit is insane. These are a bunch of like sheep herders from the Bronze Age saying random ass shit. Like, what the fuck is this? There's a part where Jacob is in Egypt and he's like super horny. Anyway, we're not even gonna get into it. Let's just say it's Vaush's favorite part of the Bible, okay? It's Vaush's favorite part of the Bible. All right, let's keep going.
The show Landman was co-created by Taylor Sheridan, aka the guy who made Yellowstone and its various prequels and spin-offs.
Ezekiel was on one, yeah, exactly. Star Spangled, yeah. He's talking about how everyone has a massive cock. It's super funny.
Don't know about those? Ask your parents. They've seen every episode.
That land isn't mine. You see that fence? That's mine. That fence is mine. This field's mine. That fucking fence down there, that's mine too.
All right, here we go. I'm sorry, chat. I can't tell you about this and then not show you. There she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys and whose emission was like that of horses. She lusted after lovers with genitals as large as donkeys and emissions like those of a horse. They have been talking about donkey cocks for 5,000 years, chat. People have been talking about donkey cocks for 5,000 years. Like, oh man, he's got a donkey cock on him. And yet she multiplied her promiscuity, remembering the days of her youth, when she had prostituted herself in the land of Egypt, and lusted after lovers whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emissions were like that of stallions. So you revisited the indecency of your youth, when Egyptians caressed your bosom and pressed your young I mean, this is, again, horny.
Spinning some bitch.
But we're not here to talk stone. Landman stars Billy Bob as an oil company guy who makes sure that they have land to drill on and that no one messes with their shit. In a scene that has since gone multi-platinum viral online, Billy Bob dunks on a city-slickin' lady lawyer who's been bamboozled by big green tech into believing that renewable energy is somehow good.
They use clean energy to power the oil wells.
They use alternative energy. There's nothing clean about this.
Please, Mr. Oilman, tell me how the wind is bad for the environment.
You have any idea how much diesel they have to burn to mix that much concrete? Or make that steel and haul this shit out here and put it together with a 450-foot crane? And its 20-year lifespan, it won't offset the carbon footprint of making it.
And watching.
Now, chat, how many of you think that sounds plausible? How many of you think that makes sense? Like, oh wow, that must take a lot of energy to build a windmill. It must never make up for what if you just burned fuel. If you just burn the fuel to make that thing, you would get a lot more electricity than setting up a windmill. How many of you think that makes sense? That is dumb as fuck! You are stupid as fuck! You're a dumb motherfucking moron! You're a fucking idiot! That is dumber than fucking, like, what the fuck are you talking about? How stupid are you, you fucking dipshit? Have you had a generator? Have you ever run a generator forever? Ever? The fact that people were like, yeah, that makes sense, dude. I think you should lose your right to vote. If it, like, this is a test. If you hear that and you're like, yeah, that makes sense, right to vote stripped. Right to vote immediately stripped. On its face, it's dumb as fuck. You don't understand anything about reality. Like, your ability to talk about things in reality is so substandard that you should not be allowed to vote. You're too stupid.
That back, you may have caught yourself thinking, oh shit, I actually don't know how much diesel they had to burn to mix that much concrete. I must be a fucking idiot.
Apple pie.
But here's the thing. You don't have to know, because a bunch of very smart people have already figured it out, and it's called a life cycle assessment. And the whole point is to account for the actual emissions over the lifetime of a wind turbine or solar panel when you factor in all the installation and maintenance, and they look like this. And if we look real close at this one, not only does a wind turbine offset the carbon footprint of making and installing and eventually disposing of it, but it will offset that carbon footprint in an average of 5.3 months. And study after study comes to a similar conclusion. It takes
That includes all the maintenance that's done. That means construction of it. That means building of it, because it's producing metric shit tons of energy by spinning a gigantic turbine. In order to generate electricity by burning oil, you have to burn oil to boil water to cause steam to rise to spin a turbine with steam pressure. Do you understand how incredibly inefficient that is? Do you understand anything about reality at all? Like, to think that windmills don't make up the energy required to build them is so mind-bogglingly fucking stupid. You must know nothing about anything. But this is most people. Most people have absolutely no idea how anything works.
a few months to a couple of years to offset the lifetime carbon footprint, depending on a lot of factors, including the ones that he's so concerned about in the Landman speech. Wind turbines spend the vast majority of their lives producing fully carbon-free energy, so that 20 years thing seems kinda super wrong. But don't worry, there's more.
We have a 120-year petroleum-based infrastructure. Our whole lives depend on it. And hell, it's in everything. That road we came in on, the wheels on every car ever made, including yours, it's in tennis rackets and lipstick and refrigerators and antihistamines, pretty much anything plastic. Your cell phone case, artificial heart valves, soap, hand lotion, garbage bags, fishing boats, you name it. Every thing.
Now, a lot of that is just true. Oil and gas are in every fucking thing. We started out lighting it on fire for energy, but over the past century, we figured out how to weave it into every part of our lives, and especially anything involving plastic, which is almost entirely made from oil and gas. And this is a really common argument for why you should shut up and let oil companies do whatever they want. I mean, your socks are made of plastic, and we do use a ton of oil, and we are running out of it. But let's just think about that argument for one extra second. If oil and gas are such incredible tools for manufacturing, and it'll be really hard to find their replacement, then shouldn't we conserve those things? Shouldn't we stop trying to cram oil and gas into socks and water bottles and build millions of solar panels and wind turbines so we can stretch our finite and dwindling fossil fuel resources as far as they can go? But instead of doing that, America is now extracting more oil and gas than any other country on Earth ever. Forget Saudi Arabia, forget Russia. America is right now the first team all-conference #1 Friday Night Lights touchdown, full eyes, clear heart, can't lose of oil and gas.
Boys, my heart is full. My heart's full.
And not to get too into the weeds here, but oil in the US, and specifically Texas, is getting harder to extract every year. Landman is set in what's known as the Permian Basin. We've been drilling for oil there for 100 years, and for the first 80 years, it was just sitting in big, accessible pools right below the surface, waiting to blast out the moment a Beverly Hillbilly tripped over it. But that stuff is basically all gone, and for the past couple of decades, the main way to get that good old French Kevin is by fracking, aka blasting the shit out of the shale rock, pumping it full of sludge, and sucking up tiny droplets of trapped oil and gas. Not only is fracking more labor-intensive and costly, but it also requires exponentially more drilling and infrastructure, since fracking wells deplete much faster. And on top of that, we've already fracked the juiciest, oiliest parts of the Permian, so we're getting less bang for our buck as the years go on. But instead of conserving our fossil fuels, or God forbid, regulating them, we are sucking them out of the ground and putting them into every thing we can think of, because the free market is always right. Technically, in this case, the free market was subsidized by the federal government, which essentially meant they gave taxpayer money to private companies to develop fracking technology, but who's counting?
Suddenly, America's like the biggest oil producer and the biggest that was me, people. I just want you to.
And what the hell, we're already here. Let's do one more.
If the whole world decided to go electric tomorrow, we don't have the transmission lines to get the electricity to the cities. It'd take 30 years if we started tomorrow.
We definitely do need...
It wouldn't. I'm gonna do it in 10 years.
need major electric grid updates in the US and the world. In the US in particular, we have an insanely piecemeal patchwork of transmission lines built by thousands of independent utilities who are mostly focused on local service without really thinking about how the whole country fits together. But if Billy Bob is worried about new construction, he is in the wrong business, because oil and gas requires an incredible amount of infrastructure. I guess Billy Bob's character just draws the line at infrastructure that doesn't involve oil and gas? Whatever the case, it's inconsistent. And also, we don't need to start working on this tomorrow. We're already working on it. The world already spends around $500 billion per year on electric grid and storage, and there are lots of viable options for upgrading the grid and transitioning to clean energy in the next 10 to 15 years. A task, I will add, that would be much easier if fossil fuel companies would stop actively blocking progress on renewable energy and grid updates.
If America just built massive solar fields and wind farms, and we built high speed or ultra high voltage DC lines across the country, we could basically solve our energy problems. But we just won't do it.
But you don't have to take my word for it. Take it away.
Doesn't the US some of the best wind farm? Yes. Oklahoma, the Dakotas. We have some of the most. We have some of the best sunlight resources in Southern California and Southern Nevada. That's not how DC works. You've never heard of ultra high voltage DC lines, huh? They have as little as 1.5% loss over 1,000 kilometers. You know how we know this? This is your first time chat, is because we just talked about it the last stream I did. Welcome in. Welcome on in to the Central Committee stream. What you think is impossible has already been done. How do you feel about that? Well, you just told me that's not how DC work. What you think is impossible has already been done. Was it yesterday or was it the day before, chat? Try to remember like what time we talked about the DC lines.
Game in town, and the terms of the loans are reasonable.
Just limited to China's neighbors. Since 2013, China has been making economic and literal inroads to much of the world.
Renewable energy
products too.
Deemed data inefficient.
Renewable.
Which is about
Angjiaba.
And
aspirations of the Chinese people. Oh, by the way, chat, we want to do
for farming shrimp
and solar.
I'm excited to share something very close to my heart.
I'm looking for a very specific thing I wanted to show the chatter. America's toast. Like America's toast. Rail, that's true of solar panels, that's true of windmills. So there's 40,000 kilometers of ultra high voltage DC line in China. I think she had a map at some point. Maybe not. So the thing that you said we can't do is already done.
Camera footage of ExxonMobil lobbyist Keith McCoy.
Did we aggressively fight against...
If somebody can find it, they can link it to me.
Some of the science? Yes. Did we join some of these shadow groups to work against some of the early efforts. Yes, that's true. But there's nothing illegal about that. You know, we were looking out for our investments. We were looking out for our shareholders.
Huh. And speaking of Exxon, there was one last little throwaway line that we should take a look at.
Who owns them?
Oil companies. We're using the power of the wells. And believe me, if Exxon thought them f***ing things right there were the future, they'd be putting them all over the goddamn place.
Okay, what the f*** is this argument? If wind turbines worked, where are all the wind turbines? You're surrounded by wind turbines. That's why you're talking about them. There's 15,000 wind turbines in Texas. Lawyer lady saw a bunch of wind turbines and asked you about them, and you said, oh yeah, the oil companies own them. What are you talking about? Okay, number one, a ton of oil companies are putting them up all over the goddamn place, like BP and Shell and Total. I think they only name-checked Exxon because they're the most recognizable oil company that isn't diving in on renewables. And number two, Exxon's an oil company. That's what they're good at. I mean, they've tried other stuff to see if they can expand their horizons. Profits. But their bread and butter is oil. And now I'm hungry. Fuck it, think about it this way. Spaghetti is a fantastic food item, but no matter how many times I try to order it from McDonald's, they refuse to serve it to me. They make burgers and fries. They'll try a salad, and for about a month in 2023, they murdered about 30% of Gen Z with Grimace's purple poison, but the absence of a McSpaghetti on their menu does not mean spaghetti isn't a viable food. They just love burgers, like Exxon loves oil.
I love gold.
Okay, but that clip would be perfect.
Here I go. China's ultra high voltage DC network. They already do the things that we people will come into my chat and say, that's impossible. And it's already built and operating in China. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, people will come into my chat and say, that's not how it works. That's impossible. And it's already built and operating in China. They also built and operated it in Brazil and India. Sorry, America's so far behind.
Perfect if you said oil. I love oil! Perfect. Whatever. The part of this that really gets my apples is that none of these arguments are new. The whole monologue.
See, the reason they could do that is because in China, you could override the will of the local people and build infrastructure against their will. In America, we have something called freedom. And we don't just build infrastructure. We don't just build infrastructure and then like attack people. And we don't override local people. Like, we don't build stuff like...
Tensions flare at the Dakota Access Pipeline protest as police use water cannons and tear gas against the demonstrators. The confrontations erupted last night after hundreds of protesters removed a burnt-out truck from the backwater bridge and then tried to cross the highway. At least one person was arrested and dozens of demonstrators reportedly injured. The 1,900-kilometer four-state pipeline is being built to carry oil from western North Dakota to a shipping point in Illinois. But the Standing Rock Sioux, whose reservation is near the pipeline route, fear a leak could contaminate their drinking water and construction could threaten sacred sites.
Oh, I guess never mind. We just use
like
state power to build pipelines for oil and gas. We don't use. So that's what happens when you try to protest oil. You get assaulted by the cops, right? You try to say, hey, we should build, instead of oil, we should build power transmission lines. You know what happens when a power transmission line breaks? Nothing. There isn't a gigantic oil leak that contaminates the fucking reservoir. It just breaks. It goes, maybe sometimes you'll have a fire or something. You know, you shut it down. Then you come back out and you fix the wires.
That's what I call climate denial's greatest hits album. These exact anti-renewable, pro-oil talking points have been tested and repeated for years, and the ones that performed the best with the general public got repeated again. This whole "you owe modern society to oil and gas" argument pops up in advertisements, nature documentaries, the Epcot Center, Facebook memes, even children's books. I literally have a children's book written by an oil and gas lobby group and distributed to public schools that uses the same oil and gas are in everything angle. And it's not a secret who's been pushing this narrative. For decades, fossil fuel companies and their many, many industry lobby groups have spent millions upon millions of dollars on disinformation campaigns and PR stunts and advertisements, even influencer marketing campaigns. There's a gaggle of articles you can read about this, but in my opinion, you should start with the Drilled podcast from Amy Westervelt. There's a link in the bio, but here's a little taste to wet your whistle.
Exxon as a company was putting ads in the newspaper that were contrary to the research that they were paying us to be doing.
So this is an experiment in shifting public opinion away from urgency.
The TLDR is that oil and gas companies decided that the best defense is a good offense, and they've spent years chumming the waters with disinformation to convince the public of everything from natural gas is clean to wind turbines are a bunch of dirty, gas-guzzling bird assassins.
They're noisy. They kill the birds. You want to see a bird graveyard? You just go. Take a look. A bird graveyard? Go under a windmill someday. You'll see more birds than you've ever seen ever in your life.
And it's finally time to get to the bottom of how this clip got into an episode of Landman that otherwise had nothing to do with wind turbines. Because folks, I think I figured it out. And I will tell you. Because I like you and I want you to have a satisfying ending to this video. First things first, it wasn't an oil industry executive who secretly and carefully wrote this out and then slipped it into a script so that Billy Bob would pop off about renewable energy. So maybe it was Billy Bob himself. I mean, after all, his performance was a little too perfect. And he is from Hot Springs, Arkansas, a mere 2-hour drive from the location of Arkansas's first major oil discovery, a little town called Stevens, Arkansas, population 770. So maybe Billy Bob just had an axe to grind for years, and he wrote that monologue himself to settle a score. I mean, after all, he did write, direct, and star in an inexplicably fantastic movie, Sling Blade, where he played an intellectually challenged man, and somehow it still holds up 30 years later. So we decided to watch some press interviews of Billy Bob for the show Landman to see what there was to see.
And by the way, this, as you can see, this is not like a preaching thing about oil is awesome. It's the ins and outs, ups and downs, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the oil business. It's not politicized or anything like that.
And that's basically how every interview went. He's not trying to forward a personal agenda other than trying to pull off wool hat.
Except he's dumb as fuck. If somebody tried to put those talking points about wind turbines in my mouth, the first thing I would have done is called up my friends and be like, is this true? Like, am I about to go out there and spout a bunch of bullshit? I mean, you memorized it, right? Like, you said it, it came out of your fucking mouth. And I would have been like, listen, I understand that this guy is supposed to be an asshole, and maybe this is what an asshole would say. But I think the audience might believe the lies, and I'm concerned about spreading these politicized lies. And, you know, we need to do something about that. Maybe we should change the speech to get rid of this. Does this really advance the character? Let's not have us just spread lies like this.
At under fedora, but make it pirate. And if that's his personal agenda, sign me up. No, obviously I'm just kidding. He looks insane. But then we found out that Landman was actually based on a podcast called Boomtown. And Christian Wallace, the creator and host, was not only on set for a lot of the Landman filming, he's an executive producer and co-creator on the show. Aha! We found the source. But then we listened to all 11 episodes of Boomtown. And it was really good. Christian worked in the Permian as an oil roughneck himself, and he'd been a writer for Texas Monthly for a few years before launching the podcast. And like a lot of his previous work, Boomtown focuses on the less well-covered human stories woven into the oil industry. The often brutal reality of an industry that might pay well when times are good, and then...
Did you see that guy accidentally hit that moose with his car?
No.
Holy shit, Jamie, pull that video up.
That's right. I listened to an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, specifically episode 2083, a full 3.5-hour long interview with Landman's other co-creator and only credited writer, Taylor Sheridan. And guess what I heard?
That would make sense to me why the government would keep that information from people. Because if we found out that people were essentially just a vessel of souls and that we are essentially designed to give birth to artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it was a lot of that. Like, a lot. At one point, Joe Rogan is pretty sure that Tucker Carlson has evidence for the existence of aliens, except they're not aliens, they're angels and demons who are farming human souls because these angel aliens eat AI. And I'm not fucking joking, that's really what's in this episode. My God, how is this one of America's most popular podcasts? But about 49 minutes into this episode, we gain some really interesting insight into the Landman script.
Nothing makes me crack up more than the Stop Oil people when they're blocking the highway with clothes made with oil. Like they have rubber.
This is one of my
It's fucking insane.
I'm making a TV show about this right now. Yeah, called Landman with Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh wow!
About the oil industry and about energy.
Interesting. Well, let's not jump to any conclusions here. I mean, he was nominated for an Oscar for writing Hell or High Water. Maybe let's skip.
You know, there's this debate about climate change, which, by the way, climate's always changing. It was changing before we showed up. We're more likely to run out of oil before we find its pure replacement. I mean, look, let's look at all the shit on your table made out of.
Okay, so right off the bat, this guy's an oil propagandist, and he doesn't even know the facts. We are never going to run out of fossil fuels on this planet. There is so much fossil fuel in this planet. We will never, ever, never, ever, ever, never, ever, never, 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 never run out. If we burn what we already know we can access economically, we will cook the planet and kill ourselves. The constraint on our oil and fossil fuels is not oil and fossil fuels. It is the atmosphere's ability to absorb more carbon while being habitable. We are not going to run out ever. For example, in Pennsylvania, we are currently drilling into the Marcellus Shale. The Marcellus Shale is a really, really large, deep shale full of oil and gas. Beneath the Marcellus Shale is an even larger, significantly larger shale called the Utica Shale. In fact, the Utica Shale also it's deep. It has even more. Okay, there is something called methane clathrates that are all on the bottom of the ocean. There's literally frozen methane, trillions upon trillions upon trillions of cubic feet of frozen methane called methane clathrates just on the bottom of the ocean. There is there's like 200 to 400 years of coal in the United States. There is no chance, zero, none. Fossil fuels, that's not talking about oil sands, that's not talking about the stuff in Venezuela. There is so much shit beyond compare. That's not talking about stuff that's underneath the Arctic or Antarctic caps. We're not running out. Never. The only thing that's going to stop us is if we stop ourselves, because fossil fuel burning is damaging the atmosphere and creating climate catastrophe. Like, this is stupid. This is stupid shit for dummies. Why do I know about the Utica Shale? Why do I know about it? Because I worked in Pennsylvania. I worked in Pennsylvania and I ran for office on trying to tax this shit. I wanted to significantly raise taxes on oil companies. I wanted to do what was called a severance tax and make it so that if you drill anything in Pennsylvania, you have to pay a significant amount of money to Pennsylvania so that we could have, if we had wells that exist, they're going to pay for a lot of services in Pennsylvania. That was one of the things I was campaigning on. I lost. Let me see if I can find a map. This is the Utica Shale. Look how large this is. That means if you drill down far enough in any of these locations, you will run into the Utica Shale. I'm going to show you the Marcellus Shale, which is what the current fracking is in the Northeast. This is the Marcellus play, as they call it. The Marcellus Fairway. We're never, ever, never, ever running out of this shit. I hate when people say we're running out, because it gives us the reason why I hate so much when people say we're going to run out of this shit is because it means that we could just sit back and it'll solve itself. It will not. It will not. We're not going to just stop burning this shit.
Of oil. The headphones, the soles of my shoes.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, the socks I'm wearing, everything.
And there it is right there. It's the Billy Bob monologue, but worse. It seems like Taylor Sheridan has heard oil lobby talking points, remembered them, and then wrote his own version for Landman. But as we listen to these guys talk for another 2 hours, we get to something even more telling.
But people don't understand. You know, they're mandating all these electric vehicles in California. 75% of California's electricity comes from fossil fuels. About 15% comes from wind and alternative energy. And then they still get a little from nuclear.
This one is wild to me. He's not even close on those numbers. He's doing a Good Will Hunting style monologue, but he doesn't know any of the actual stats. I mean, he's a good writer, and his instincts tell him he needs to say some numbers there, so he just kind of makes them up. And he's way off. According to the actual numbers from the California Energy Commission, renewable and no carbon energy in 2023 clocked in at 58%, with fossil fuels coming in at 42%, which is right around half of what Taylor Sheridan said. Weirdly, he gave wind power too much credit in California and then forgot about solar generation. And I mean, if I had to speculate, I might guess that because Taylor lives in Texas, where they do get a big chunk of their electricity from wind, he assumed maybe it'd be similar in California, so he riffed some numbers that would support the thing he wanted to say, which again, was wrong, but it sounded pretty good. I actually have a podcast called The Climate Denier's Playbook, where I look at old climate denial talking points with my co-host Nicole Conlon, and Joe Rogan and Taylor Sheridan hit like 75% of the talking points.
Every one of their predictions has always been wrong. I mean, if you go back to Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth,
supposed to no snow by 2006 or something.
All
like
bullshit. All wrong.
Let's just say we took a corner of Utah and we just solar paneled that f***er. Guess what we can't do? Get it anywhere. We talk about things that warm the planet.
Yeah, that did a lot of warming for sure.
I've never heard no one's mentioned the 1,000 nuclear bombs we set off.
And for the record, I don't think these two dudes are taking bribes from the oil industry. I just think that they are repeating stuff that they've heard without actually checking to see if it's true. They're basically sharing a Facebook meme, except they have massive audiences, a dozen television shows, and access to Billy Bob Thornton. And they're doing it in a deeply unself-aware way.
Because I can't stand to pay money and have somebody preach to me their ideas.
We're in a weird time where everybody has a say, and I don't think everybody should be able to talk. It's like, I mean, everybody should be able to talk, but through social media, that gets just broadcast en masse to the world. And you get these groups of people that they huddle up in these fucking echo chambers and they duke it out.
I just read something in the last day or two that, and I'm going to get it wrong, but 1937 is closer to 1984 than 2023 is to 84.
He did get it wrong, but not because he's being paid off by big number, because it's a thing he heard one time and it sounded right to him, so he repeated it. And I get it. We all want to be Goodwill Hunting, but if you're trying so hard to own the libs that you're making shit up to reinforce some propaganda you heard, you're not Goodwill Hunting, you're the ponytail guy. And while I can't say for sure where Sheridan heard all this stuff the first time, it seems exceedingly likely that we can eventually trace it all back to the fossil fuel companies who've been spending millions of dollars to spread these messages as far and wide as...
Joe just said they get in these echo chambers and duke it out. That's the opposite of an echo chamber. What's up?
they could. And frankly, it was a great plan. Oil executives in the 80s didn't have to kidnap a young Taylor Sheridan and force feed him lies about wind turbines so he would grow up to write a snappy monologue to poison the well against renewable energy. They just made a big vision board so they could capture as many minds as they possibly could, and one of the minds happened to be this guy. So what are we gonna do about it? Well, the first step is to get more informed about climate disinformation. Incredible journalists have built careers investigating and breaking stories and writing about disinformation, and you should read their work and follow them on social media and support them whenever possible. We put a list of some of our favorites in the description. Seriously check them out. The sad fact is that there's a lot of bullshit out there, and it's not obvious that whatever you're reading or listening to or watching is accurate. It isn't obvious how long a wind turbine takes to work off its carbon debt, or what California's electrical grid mix is. If I hadn't just done a video about natural gas, I might never have realized that Sheridan's very confident rant was actually a sort of fossil fuel fan fiction. I mean, look at this chart. Looks legit, it's all bullshit. I just made up a bunch of numbers, it's that easy. And judging by recent events, the level of bullshit is going to increase. In the proud tradition of a billionaire with a social media network, Mark Zuckerberg released a video about how Facebook will be rolling back fact-checking. So arming yourself with a better understanding of how to spot propaganda is a really good idea. Uh-oh, did I just spend a bunch of time pushing a narrative that learning about climate disinformation was good and then come to a self-serving conclusion? You bet your apples I did. I learned it from the best. Whoa, location change. That's right, I'm in sunny San Francisco for something completely unrelated to this episode, but I figured this would be a good place to tell you about Climate Town hats.
When I first saw that video, I immediately debunked it. I think I was one of the first people to debunk it when it went viral on Twitter. It's just crazy. All right, everybody. I think the rest of this is a merch ad. So if you would like to complete your ethical reacts, go ahead. But that's going to be the end of it for me today. I am going to send y'all over to... Who should we go over to?
You're thinking of...
Who should we go to? You know what I feel like, chat? Today, I was yelling a lot. And that means I think I need some mental health care. I need some like meditation. I need some like relaxation. I need some centering. I need some self-reflection. So that means we're going over to my buddy, my pal, my friendo, Joshua, over at the Brain Domain. So we're going to send y'all over there. Say hi to Joshua for me. Be nice. DSA raid in the chat. Also, be nice to my friends and family. If you're mean to them, I will hate you. Be smarter than that. Even if what they do is something that you're not a fan of, first of all, you're wrong. I only like cool people. Is there any hope for us? What? All this stuff is easy to fix. All this stuff is easy to fix. Since 2008, China has built 40,000 kilometers of ultra high-speed rail. We can fix this. We just have to want to do it. All right, everybody. Stay safe. Solidarity forever. And free Palestine.